Y'all ever driven a go-kart? Well, I'll tell you what, they don't all look like this, or even this. See, the big boy go-karts look like this, maybe even this, or my favorite, this. This is a little thing I like to call a Lotus Elise, also known as the Lotus Type 111 and named after Elisa Artioli, granddaughter of Chairman Romano Artioli. It's one of the best handling cars of all time, and even though it reminds me of Jumba Jakiba from Leo and Stitch, I'd argue it's one of the best looking too. So, what makes this thing Autocar's best driver's car of 2001, Top Gear's best sports car of 2004, and one of my go-to rides in Need for Speed Most Wanted? Let's take a look and find out. Let's get in our time machine and go back to 1996 when the first ever Lotus Elise was announced. The head engineers that founded the Lotus car company in England, Colin Chapman and Colin Dare, believed that a good sports car had to be light. Now, they knew how to make cars. They participated in Formula One racing for almost 50 years from 1958 to 94, just before the Elise came about. So at this point, they had the time and they had the money to work on something revolutionary. The engineers at Lotus stuck with their core belief of building light cars. They brainstormed to come up with everything they could think of to make this thing light as a feather. One thing they did was be the first to use aluminum extrusion and bonding to build the car's chassis, making for an amazingly rigid, lightweight, 150-pound chassis. Hell, that's lighter than me. Combine that with a composite material body and a lightweight engine, and you got one light friggin' car. Think half the weight of your average sedan at the time, a grand total of only 1,598 pounds. That engine we talked about is a transverse mid-engine 1.8 liter Rover K-Series inline 4. And all these first gens came with a 5-speed standard gearbox. Depending on which edition of the Elise you got pretty much the same engine, but with varying power from 118 horsepower to 179. And like I said, the handling is phenomenal. The Elise had adjustable double wishbone suspension all around, balanced weight distribution, low center of gravity at just 18.5 inches, and super responsive steering. Take all that and mix it in with a light, rigid chassis and a decently quick engine, and what do you get? Go-kart, baby. But go-kart wasn't quite good enough, so they made a better go-kart in '99, and they called it the 111S. This one had the same engine, but with variable valve control and 145 horsepower, and it had a closer gear ratio, meaning faster acceleration. Then, they came with the 340R edition in 2000, named after the 340 of them that they built. It's completely roofless, with a look that reminds you of a Plymouth Prowler and concepts similar to the Ariel Atom, if you're familiar with that. With 179 horsepower, it had a 340 horsepower to 1 ton weight ratio, which is awesome and I would imagine makes a fantastic track car. But even that wasn't good enough, so they made a track pack version that raised the horsepower to 195. Whew, I need to take a minute. God, I fucking love Lotus. And by the way, you've heard of the Lotus Exige? Yeah, so this literally just started out as the hardtop version of the Elise. They started selling this in 2000 and, oh, don't even get me started on the special editions. I mean, look at all these. Yeah, I could do a whole other ass video on them. There's actually one more first gen Elise to touch on. So there's this company in the UK called Zytek, which nowadays does all kinds of motorsport engineering. Well, in 98 through 2003, they collaborated with Lotus as a display of the company's capabilities. So what they did was they made an electric fucking Lotus in 1998. Better yet, it had 200 horsepower with a range of 120 miles. In 1998. Just goes to show how much combustion engines have delayed the research and development of EVs. Sadly, that's changing in today's world. Not to hate on the first generation, it's a badass little car, but I'm glad we got that one out of the way, because now we get to move on to the best, the second generation. This is the sexy, curvy looking cutie in all those Need for Speed games that made this one of my first dream cars. Quick disclaimer, I have a whole ass, ever expanding list of dream cars. Part of the reason they even started on a second generation is because of new European crash sustainability regulations. So, might as well come up with a fully redesigned and modernized car. and my god is it pretty. Now, General Motors actually agreed to fund this project for Lotus, and in return, they'd be able to make rebadged versions for Opel and Vauxhall, resulting in the not nearly as good looking Opel Speedster and Vauxhall VX220. Second gen came with the same Rover inline 4 as the previous, more safety features like airbags and almost the same chassis as the original, just a few changes so that it can meet the safety regulations. It's got tons more downforce with an aerodynamic fiberglass body, rear diffuser, and spoiler. The design inspiration came from one of Lotus's previous concepts, the M250, and hell, for once a concept car that looks more realistic to see on the road than the actual car. And I don't know why, but I've always been in love with those Jumba Jukiba looking headlights. That, along with the hood vents, the vents in the door that make it too thin to fit speakers in, and that beautiful booty, make this thing just so dang pretty. A cool fact is the radiator on this thing is actually tilted to be almost horizontal. That way air swoops in from the grill and exits straight up through the radiator and through the hood vents. And God help you if you need to replace your radiator. The sad part is, there were no Lotus Elises in the US market. Until 2005, when they came out with the 111R, also known as the Federal Elise. This was the Elise that was made specifically for the US market, just for FBI agents so they could keep up with those hoodlums and their Mustangs. Just kidding. At this point, any warm-blooded American soul could finally buy an Elise if they had the money. This one didn't have no Rover engine though, no. It came with a 189 horsepower Toyota 2ZZGE engine that for some reason had Yamaha designed twin cam heads and variable valve timing. That's a mouthful. This is also the first Elise to come with a 6-speed as opposed to a 5-speed. No more mistaking your reverse gear for 6th, ladies and gentlemen. The 2005 model's headlights would literally melt in the sunlight. But they fixed that and fixed all the other little issues and continuously improved the cars over the years. They really wanted to break into the American market as best they could. Just like the first gen, they came with a slew of special editions and packages. There's far too many to go through just in this video, so maybe I'll make another one just on the special editions of the Elise, because a lot of them are pretty cool. And that's not quite the end of the Elise just yet, as there's a third generation beginning in 2011. They say it's not a true third generation, whatever that's supposed to mean, but it does look a bit different. First and foremost, they moved the headlights to be a single unit, which, in my opinion, takes away a lot of the personality that unique little quirk gave to the Elise. Anyways, the first appearance of a concept of this thing was at the 2010 Paris Motor Show. I'm not a fan of what they released at that motor show. It feels like a mix between a Tesla and Lexus LFA, so thankfully they stuck with a more traditional looking design for production. It came with 134 horsepower, 1.6 liter or 217 horsepower 1.8 liter Toyota inline 4 engine. Better yet, the 1.8 came standard with a Magnuson supercharger. It's got hard suspension and a bare bones interior just like the older models. Even the AC is optional. In 2011, optional AC. The thing is literally just a mass-produced track car. And you remember how Lotus had to make some of the changes to the Elise to meet safety standards? Well, it kind of comes back to bite them again, as the 2011 model was the last Elise to be sold in the American market for not having smart airbags. Man, safety standards suck. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the Elise just wasn't ever really meant to be an American car. Lotus's market is by a vast majority European and some even Australian. Anyway, once again, there's a ton of variations you could have gotten, but here are some of the highlights. First off, we have the Elise Sprint, released in 2017. The idea of this one is to further reduce the weight of the car. You see the pattern here? They shaved off an extra 88 pounds. They made it that way with the carbon fiber body panels, carbon fiber seats, polycarbonate glass, a lithium-ion battery, forged wheels. They really did the most for this one, and I'm totally here for it. Then we got the 2015 Cup 220, which is basically the high performance trim level, followed by its successor, the 2016 Cup 250, even higher performing. Then there's the Club Racer, which comes with a sport setting for something called the Dynamic Performance Management, or DPM, making the car basically feel smoother. This one was targeted for the less experienced driver who still wanted a little bit of speed and action in their life. And here's a list of the rest of the variations. And here's a kind of bittersweet little anecdote, but it seems like a happy ending for the Elise. The last Elise made was a gold Sport 240, and it was gifted to the one and only Elisa Artioli, the very girl that this car is named after. And it's sad, but that is the final Lotus Elise. Or is it? Well, we know we're never gonna get another Elise with a good old-fashioned combustion engine again. That's because Lotus actually confirmed that the Emira would be the last of them. I mean, they killed the Elise, Exige, and Evora all at the same time in 2021. But there may be hope. We may see a new Elise sometime around 2026. Whether it'll be called an Elise or something new, who knows. I personally hope they come up with a new name so that the Elise can rest in peace. The thing is, Lotus detailed its new electric sports car platform a couple years ago, and we know that they plan on using the Type 135 platform. That's the same platform as our beloved Elise had. There's one thing about it that, again, kind of bittersweet. You see, Lotus was actually acquired by a Chinese car maker called Geely, I don't fucking know, in 2017. On the one hand, it's rumored that they plan on using Geely parts to keep the car costs low. On the other hand, I'm not so sure how I feel about the reliability of Chinese car parts. I mean, supposedly they've gotten better in the past couple of years, but still. If you ever bought anything off of Wish.com, it's basically Chinese surplus super cheap crap, and every little bit of it is dog water quality. Like, I bought a pack of microfiber towels there once thinking, oh, there's no way they could fuck up the quality on this one. The towels I got were synonymous to one-ply toilet paper. Anyway, nothing against China, but like, man, have y'all ever heard of quality control? So how about the Elise today? Well, they're still relatively expensive if you want one, around 50 grand, but honestly, I'd say they're pretty worth the price. I mean, I've never driven one, but I've only heard good things about them. But the price point means that the people who own an Elise also own a good number of Benjamins, so they go wild with their custom joms. From all carbon bodies to one-off body kits to AMG V8 swaps, they go crazy with these cars, as they should. I wouldn't really say this car is lesser known. I feel like a lot of people know about it, but it's definitely not talked about a lot, as is the same with Lotus cars in general. They've got a pretty niche following, and I hope to see the brand become more popular as they start rolling out their EVs. When this happens, it'll probably drive up the price of the older cars regardless. So, that's the Lotus Elise. A beautiful car that's super fun to drive and will be forever adored by many. Go out there and get yourself a little go-kart. Let me know what cars I should research next, and as for now, I hope you learned something today. I will see you all later.